Acton Vale, January 1969. That night, Father Claude Léveillé went to visit the St. Onge family. Father Léveillé had barely gotten through the door when Mr. St. Onge ushered him off to one of the bedrooms on the second floor. The clergyman was stunned as he stepped into the doorway. Objects in the room seemed to be animated as though by an invisible evil force. An iron bed was bouncing around on the floor. But what caught Father Léveillé's attention the most were the blankets on the other bed, which were constantly being pulled up and down. Feeling the presence of evil in the room, Father Léveillé took out a vial of holy water and blessed the room. "What do you think, Father?" asked Mr. St. Onge. "I think we need to pray. A lot." An invisible guest appeared to be staying at the St. Onge house. The St. Onge family was going about its normal activities that cold January day. No one suspected that their house was about to become the stage for disturbing occurrences.
There were quite a few happenings in the St. Onge house in Acton Vale in 1969. I'd been a parish priest there for about a year and a half. What happened was, we got calls at the rectory 3 evenings in a row. A priest went to the St. Onge family home to ascertain, along with some other people, that the furniture was effectively moving by itself. Bed sheets were moving around. Wardrobes were emptying themselves. There was a framed picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Help that went hang gliding and was flopping about. Lots of things of that nature.
It all began at 7 p.m. that night. In the kitchen, a picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Help came off the wall without breaking. In the bedrooms, something intangible emptied the dresser drawers and tore the bedding off the mattresses. Evil forces were also at work in the living room, as furniture began to move without anyone touching it. In less than an hour, the house looked like a battlefield. Not knowing what to do, Mr. St. Onge decided to phone the church.
The St. Onge family were all regular churchgoers, particularly Mr. St. Onge himself. He was in charge of the cemetery. He was the one who dug the graves. Also, he was often a choir master at the morning mass in church.
Father Wilfred Bérard answered Mr. St. Onge's call that night. At first, it all seemed too bizarre to be true, but the young priest decided to go and visit the house to see exactly what was happening. Father Bérard was amazed at what he saw when he arrived. Cupboard doors were opening and closing by themselves in the kitchen. The St. Onges told them that these strange things had been happening for more than an hour, and they didn't know why. Throughout the evening, Father Bérard witnessed many equally disconcerting incidents. Then, suddenly at 10 p.m., the manifestations stopped. Father Bérard left with no idea that the nightmare would start up again the next day. Just like the day before, odd things began to happen at 7 p.m. Guylaine was in the kitchen, studying her catechism, when suddenly, the picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Help came off the wall. Guylaine screamed in fright.
Madame St. Onge!
Clearly, the St. Onge family was cursed. This time, Father Léveillé was called in to tackle the problem.
Madame St. Onge!
C'est là que j'ai été témoin de cette...
I was a witness to a few of these happenings. A clothes brush with a slightly rounded handle was balancing upright on a towel rack.
Sur une tige de... où on met des serviettes.
It would have taken at least 5 minutes to get it to balance like that. And this just happened instantaneously.
C'était fait instantanément.
As the evening went on, Father Léveillé noticed that the phenomena seemed to be linked to young Guylaine.
Guylaine was a young girl. She was in elementary school. She was about, I don't remember her exact age, she must have been 7 or 8 years old. She was looked after by the Saint-Onge family because her parents worked long hours. They wanted Guylaine to be well supervised by a family who would see to it that her homework was done and so on. So that's why she was with the Saint-Onge family.
Father Léveillé noticed that the disturbances seemed to get worse when Guylaine was studying her catechism. He had seen enough to know that he was dealing with the forces of evil.
I deduced that since it was triggered by prayer, the evil spirit must be behind it.
That same evening, they heard a loud noise coming from upstairs. The Saint-Onges ran up to find that a small table had been overturned. While they were setting the table back on its feet, the blankets from one of the beds were tossed onto the floor. As soon as 10 p.m. struck, the manifestation stopped, just as they had the night before.
The third night, I was on duty at the office. I took the call, and Mr. Saint-Onge, as he had done the previous nights, tells me on the phone, "Get over here at once, the devil's on the loose."
Father Bernier went to the Saint-Onge's house with two other priests. He also witnessed the inexplicable movement of the picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
What struck me the most was that at a certain point, the picture moved across the room. It sort of glided in the air. Then it went and hung itself on the living room doorknob. So then I said, I think we have a problem. Sometimes it landed on the side, and then it would move again. At one point, Mrs. Saint-Onge got sick and tired of running after it and hanging it back on the wall, so she stuck it behind a chair. She pushed a chair against the wall, and the picture started to jump around behind the chair. The other thing that really struck me was that at one point, when we were sitting in the living room, we heard a noise sort of like tap dancing. It was coming from the kitchen. We went there and we had a look. The table and all the chairs were dancing up and down. A real tap dance number.
Unlike his colleagues, Father Bernier had had scientific training. To him, these types of manifestations were born of superstitious belief or fraud. He was confident that he would find a rational explanation for the occurrence. The only thing that Father Bernier and the others found was that the manifestations took place between 7 and 10 p.m. and they always seemed to happen around young Guylaine.
We noticed that as soon as Guylaine started studying her catechism, it set something off. Whether it was a coincidence or whatever, I haven't the foggiest idea. But we noticed it did happen on a few occasions.
Poltergeist, by tradition, it's a noisy, knocking spirit by definition. But more likely these days, the theory is that it's coming more and more from adolescent girls who are going through such a change, either physically and mentally, that it's actually, the term has been coined recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. And it's a mind over matter type of situation. And what a lot of people are calling it is it's a mental temper tantrum. So like if you get mad, you're more likely to lash out and hit a wall. Well, some people are more likely to, or in this case, with the poltergeist phenomena, likely to lash out with their mind instead of physically.
To see if there was a link between Guylaine and the manifestations, the priests suggested to Guylaine that she say a prayer.
We asked her to say the prayer she'd learned in her catechism in 6th grade. With Jesus in my heart, I'm not afraid. She started praying, and right at that moment, when she was saying the prayer, the racket started.
The rosary that Guylaine was holding was literally torn from her hands. The incident convinced Father Léveillé even further that the manifestations were the work of the devil.
She had been staying with people who were very devout and who were regular churchgoers, and her parents were not. I didn't know them. This could trigger a conflict within her.
The manifestations stopped at 10 p.m., just as they had the previous two nights. The only difference was that this time they seemed to have stopped for good. The St. Onge family didn't report any further strange phenomena. For Father Normand Bernier, these manifestations were to remain an enigma.